Hello everybody, welcome back to another election prediction video. This time we're covering the 2024 Senate map for the month of August 2024. So a lot of things have changed. Biden's out of the race. I think that kind of helps Senate Democrats down ballot in a few of these races. And we've gotten some more polls to make a more accurate prediction now. So let me just get into setting up some of the safe states here. States are just not going to be competitive at all. I know Nebraska does have an independent running, and there was a few polls there that showed the independent was actually close. Let's just take a look here. Dan Osborne. But again, there's so many undecideds here that they're pretty much going to go to the Republican. It's a red state. It's a safe red state as well. So it's like, I don't think these numbers are really going to hold. Dan Osborne's probably going to end up in the low 40s in Nebraska. It's going to be a safe Republican state still. I don't really think it's in reach for the Democrats to win with an independent down there. But let's just keep going through these safe states. Okay, I think we can begin. I'll start off with New Jersey. So, again, Bob Menendez, he's resigning from the Senate, so I don't really think he's going to run anymore. I think he's pretty much out of the conversation for running here. I think that filing is probably going to, it's probably going to drop out of that campaign, basically. He's not going to make it on the ballot, I believe. And even if he does decide to run, this is still a likely blue state. So it's purely dependent on Menendez running again, but I think it's going to be safe blue. And I don't think Menendez is going to run. He's resigning from the Senate for that trial here. So I think we could take New Jersey out of the conversation here. It's not going to go likely blue with Menendez out of the race at this point. Angus King in Maine, he's a very popular senator up there, a very popular independent. He'll easily win re-election. Amy Klobuchar also will easily win re-election. She's probably going to win by 20%, something like that. The Republican candidate's terrible. He has pretty much little chance at actually winning. He's already losing by 21 points in the most recent poll here. So, yeah, I think we could write off Minnesota for now. So going for the next few states, I think we could head to New Mexico and Virginia. So there has been recent polls actually showing a close-ish race in New Mexico. So one poll had him up here by 4, but this is Republican internal by the Dominici campaign, I would say. That's how you pronounce it. And we had another poll done by Redfield showing him up by 6. And they, looking at the cash on hand totals, she's not too far behind him. So I see a good argument to put this as a likely blue state for now. But I wouldn't be surprised if he wins by over 10. But so far, she's not doing terribly in New Mexico. So I am putting this as a likely blue state. I think he's probably going to end up winning by about 9% or so, so just shy of an over 10% margin. This race could go into safety in the coming months, but I'm being cautious by putting into likely blue. So going on to Virginia, again, Hung Cao, he's still polling quite a lot behind. Some polls even have him down by over 10%. Tim Kaine he's not over 50 in the most recent polls, so I do see the argument as putting it as a likely blue state, and I will be putting it as a likely blue state for now, but this state race could also shift to safe blue. Maryland, let's take a look at this polls here, and there is one poll done by the Hogan campaign that does have him narrowly up here, but there's like no data in this poll. We don't have anything else. We just know it has him up by 6. The other polls that are not part of the Hogan campaign show a completely different story. That shows also Brooks starting to lead by quite a lot of a margin here, blowing him out of the water in some of these polls. So, again, I'm more inclined to believe these numbers than the one mystery poll that doesn't have any margin of error or sample size. And just due to polarization, Maryland's a D plus 30 state. He realistically does not really have a good chance at winning. He will get up below 10, however, just because he's a popular former governor, but he doesn't really stand a chance here. It could even get to over a 10% margin as well. So let's go to the next few states. Texas. So some people have moved Texas down to a lean R state. I'm not ready to do that. I still see polls showing Ted Cruz up here by a likely Republican margin. He got the endorsement of a Democrat from Harris County, I believe. So again, I still think Colin Allred, he's still in a likely R race right now, and I don't really think it's going to turn around unless Harris is able to get Trump below a 5% margin in the state of Texas. That's the only way this race will open up as competitive again. So for now, I have Ted Cruz winning this race by about 5.5 points, I would say. So I think he's pretty favored. So I have this as a likely Republican state. Moving on to the state of Florida. Again, Democrats aren't really in a great spot here. They're continually behind in these polls. Recently, some polls have it as a lean R race, but I think these undecideds is going to break for the Republicans in the state of Florida. It's just trending more and more Republican, this state. So I think Rick Scott's going to probably win Florida by about 6, while Trump wins the state by 8. So he underperforms Trump a little, just because he isn't the most well-liked guy. So let's go on to the next few races. Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. So Pennsylvania, they are putting a lot of money into the McCormick campaign, like a ton. You could just take a look at the fundraising. But I saw one fundraising total on Twitter that pretty much had the Democrats and Republicans evenly spending on the Pennsylvania Senate race. However, that isn't materializing. We're already seeing Bob Casey Jr. still leading by 6% on average here, even with the Republicans putting in an equal amount of money. So I think that just kind of shows how popular of an incumbent Bob Casey Jr. really is here. So again, I don't think McCormick's the best candidate. He is a bit of an out-of-stater, and we saw how an out-of-stater did last time in Pennsylvania back in 2022. So this race is a likely blue race. Going over to Wisconsin up next. Let's see. Eric Hovde continues to pull behind. He's pulling behind by 6 percentage points. The most recent polls still have him down by quite a lot. SoCal Research, 12-point lead for Baldwin, 8-point lead here as well. It's just, and this is a conservative group too. So Hovde is just kind of a weak candidate. I really think he's pretty overrated. I think Baldwin's going to be kind of doing well enough to probably end up winning this race by a comfortable margin here. Used to have this race as lean blue. It could still get to lean blue, but right now I think she's pretty favored to win here by a likely blue margin. And with Harris leading in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, according to the polls now narrowly, that will probably help down ballot Democrats. I think they'll probably outpace her a good amount because they're incumbents after all, and they're popular incumbents in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. But I think these races as likely blue are a good place to put them for now. So going over to the state of Michigan, we finally have 2 candidates confirmed now, Slotkin v. Mike Rogers. Rogers, he's a good candidate. He was a former elected representative for the state of Michigan. Polling has Slotkin up by nearly 6 percentage points. There hasn't been a poll that has been close all that recently. There's a lot of undecideds in this race, so it might depend on how the presidential race goes in Michigan, whoever wins here. Maybe whoever wins Michigan presidentially will also win the Senate race. That's something to consider here. And Slotkin, she's not over 50. She's really in the high 40s here. So this is a more competitive race because she is not an incumbent, and she doesn't have that incumbency advantage, so it makes sense to put this as a lean blue race rather than a likely blue one. Heading over to Nevada and to Arizona up next, I think we should head to Arizona first. So Kari Lake, Republicans have doomed themselves. They officially nominated the worst candidate they could have picked for this race. They really had a chance if they picked Mark Lamb, even though I still think he would have lost, but at least he isn't Kari Lake. He's actually a sheriff here, so he actually has some experience, unlike Kari Lake, who was just a former news anchor and lost embarrassingly when she was leading by so much in 2022. So Kari Lake's not even changing her campaign. She's still criticizing McCain Republicans not working to get their votes, and that's why she's going to lose this race. I don't think she really has a good shot at winning. Pretty much every poll has her down at this point. And she's going to underperform Trump. She's just not a likable person. She's a grifter, first of all. She's still grifting money off Republicans trying to overturn the 2022 governor's race. It's honestly quite pathetic, and I think a lot of voters see her as pathetic and a grifter, and that's why she's going to lose. She's probably going to lose by 3 or 4 points to Ruben Gallego, and this is Republicans throwing away a winnable race because it's an open seat. They could have nominated anyone else and they would have had a chance. But, they decided to go with a grifter, the grifter queen, Kari Lake, and she's going to lose. So they decided to go with the worst candidate, and that's on them. Heading over to Nevada up next, we actually have a decent Republican, Sam Brown. He has military experience. He isn't as radical as Kari Lake, so that's a plus for him. But he's up against an incumbent Democrat here. And with Democrats doing a lot better with Harris as the nominee, their odds are going to improve in Nevada. And honestly, I think Harris is probably even favored in Nevada right now. So that bodes well for Senate Democrats' chances here. So I really think just due to incumbency advantage, Jackie Rosen's very favored, and she's basically led every single poll against Sam Brown. So she's the favorite in her race for now. It's not a tilt race, it's lean blue. And now we're down to the most competitive Senate races. Democrats still need to sweep these last two toss-ups to win. So let's start off with the state of Montana. Now, with Montana, there hasn't been any real recent polling. We haven't seen any Democrat pollsters. That probably not. It probably doesn't bode well to them because that means the internal polls aren't good enough to release to the public. It probably shows Tester down here narrowly. Shea isn't a bad candidate compared to Matt Rosendale, who they almost decided to nominate, but he pulled himself out of the race. So again, I think Tim Shea, he's a decent candidate. He's a former retired Navy SEAL. And even though the polls kind of have it close, it's just the lack of polls really here that makes Montana hard to predict. It is a R+16 state from 2020 as well, so we have to take into account for that. Will there be enough ticket splitting for Jon Tester to win in such a polarized America? I'm more inclined to say no. And I just think the lack of Democratic internal polls probably leads to those internal polls being not the best for Jon Tester in the state of Montana. So I have this race as a lean Republican race. He could still win, but there's a lack of data here, and I think that doesn't bode well for Jon Tester in this state. Ohio, on the other hand, there's only good data for Sherrod Brown here. So far, Bernie Moreno has not led in a single poll even after he won the primary. That's really bad for him. He was the worst candidate Republicans could have nominated, and of course they chose to nominate him. They could have ran it. The other two Republicans who I honestly think would be leading the polls right now against Sherrod Brown. And a Remington research poll shows Brown up by 6. He's hitting 50. These are the important numbers to mention here. Tim Ryan was never at 50% or above 50% in the polls against J.D. Vance. So we can't say, well, Vance won the 2022 Ohio Senate race even though he was behind. Yeah, but Tim Ryan was never at 50%, nor was he the incumbent. So that's why I lean towards saying Sherrod Brown is the favorite in this race still. Bernie Moreno has not led in a single poll. This isn't like 2022's Ohio Senate race. Brown's the incumbent. He's hitting 50% or over 50%. He has pretty good approval ratings as well. And with the new candidate race with Kamala Harris, she's probably going to do a bit better than Biden in the state of Ohio. I think she'll do better than Biden in most states. But Democrats have a lot more energy going for him this time. They're probably going to get higher turnout than they would have with Biden. And even the Republican pollsters say Sherrod Brown's leading. So I think that says a lot about this race and says a lot about how Bernie Moreno is a pretty weak candidate in this race. And Democrats, they're putting a lot of money in this race, so are the Republicans. But which of the money is actually working out right now? It's working out for Sherrod Brown, even with spending an equal amount to Bernie Moreno. So, again, this is a narrow tilt in favor of the Democrats. Even though he leads by 5 on the polling average, it would be a likely blue state. It's going to be a tilt blue state here. Again, there's a lot of polarization in America. Even though we have Trump winning Ohio by 10. I think there's enough ticket splitters here to help Sherrod Brown out here win this race narrowly. And the polling shows that he's hitting 50% or above. Democrats have a lot of money in this race going for them. And right now, I would probably put this race as tilt blue. So this is the Senate map currently. We don't have a lot of data out in Montana yet. But so far, Republicans are still favored to take the U.S. Senate just because the Democrats have such a bad Senate map for them in 2024. But who knows? Maybe we'll get some Montana Senate polls and maybe that race rating can change. But for now, I'm pretty confident saying this is my Senate prediction for the month of August 2024. If you're new to this channel, I'd highly recommend subscribing. I'd greatly appreciate it. Other than that, thanks so much for watching. I'll see y'all in the next one.